Hello, everybody, and welcome into another Hockey Writers Roundtable episode here. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and on this one, we're going to go through a few early trade candidates and going off the article that Alex wrote what was it, yesterday, this morning?
2 days, I think 2 days ago, even
A couple
already.
days ago now.
Yeah.
And one thing's already changed on it. David Camp is a free agent, so he's not part of that trade, but we will talk about the other players on it. But Alex, how's it going?
Pretty good, other than that Jack Hughes news that just came out like an hour ago.
Yeah.
That was not great, but yeah, otherwise things are going well.
For sure. Yeah, that's a blow. It wasn't even hockey related.
Yeah,
It didn't happen in a game, unfortunately.
yeah, that stinks.
All right, well, let's jump into this, and we'll start with Ryan O'Reilly with Nashville Predators, which, I mean, the Predators off to not the best start. They did just win in Sweden, which I mean that's a good, but they're still pretty much low in the standings, so he might actually be available. He's been in rumors before, and I know the Predators said, they're treating it as he has no trade clause, even though he doesn't. So he's going to have to approve any trade anyway. But what are the chances that he does get traded? And you have anyone in mind that might want? I mean, obviously, there's going to be a lot of teams going to want him. But what do you think about him?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think he's going to get traded at some point, and probably a couple of other players on the Predators, namely Jonathan Marchessault and Steven Stamkos, if this I guess poor start to the season keeps going. But I think O'Reilly may be the first one who goes. I mean, we saw his comments after, I don't remember what game it was, but he's like, I've only had like one good season in my career or something like that. And he said he regretted the comments a couple of days later, but you can tell he's frustrated for sure. And I think there's so many teams that are in need of a second line, middle six type center. That there's going to be plenty of interest in him. We know Montreal is looking at adding a second line center. That could be a fit. I don't know if the Maple Leafs really need a center, and I don't know if he had a great time in Toronto when he was there, but that could be a fit as well. And then, I just mentioned the Jack Hughes injury with the Devils. I mean, that's totally possible. I think even without Jack Hughes, he would have been a really good fit for the Devils. Dmitry Filipovich was on Pete Blackburn's podcast earlier this week, and he said he thinks the best fit for Ryan O'Reilly is the Devils. Because I guess you can tell with Jack Hughes that you just don't know when he's going to be healthy. So that's an issue, even though today's injury is a freak accident, not a hockey-related one. But I think having that center depth would be important for them. The Eastern Conference looks pretty wide open right now. So if this continues, I think O'Reilly would be someone that the Devils would have. I'm pretty sure they actually had interest in him at last deadline, if I remember. So I'm sure they would have interest in him again this time around.
For sure, yeah. I mean, like I say, there's going to be a lot of teams that would get in the running for him. I know even the Vancouver Canucks might look at him because, of course, anyone that needs centerman, and they definitely do need that. So, I mean, it just depends on, again, he's probably going to have to approve any trade, even though he doesn't have that clause. It's something that they probably will run it by him before any trade happens. I mean, yeah, like you say, there's a lot of other guys in the Predators that could be available as well. Stamkos has been in the rumors you mentioned, and I mean, Marchessault. So these two guys that just signed in free agency to pretty good contracts, and they're already being talked about as trade bait. That's kind of interesting, but yeah. All right, well, let's move to another team that's, I mean, they're in the trade rumors a lot because they are last in the Western Conference, I believe, still. Even though they just got a shutout win, Dustin Wolf getting his first shutout. But there's three guys that you mentioned in the article, and that's Nazem Kadri, Rasmus Andersson, two guys that have always been in trade rumors. Blake Coleman's a bit of a new one. He's been rumored to the Devils, kind of a good return for him. But these three guys, do you foresee trades happening with any of these as it gets closer here?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely Rasmus Andersson. I feel like it's a matter of when he gets traded and not if, because he's on an expiring contract and the Flames aren't going anywhere this season unless they have like the turnaround of all turnarounds. I think Vegas was interested in him around last trade deadline, but I'm not really sure they can make that happen right now, salary cap wise. But they do always seem to find a way, so who knows? And then I think I've seen Andersson's name pop up with the Maple Leafs in the last couple of days. It looks like they're trying to add on defense. And I can't blame them. Their defense has been quite the mess to start this season. And I'm sure there's going to be plenty of other teams that have interest in him because he's a right-handed shot and he plays top four, top pair minutes. So I don't know if he has a no trade clause or not, but I'm sure there'll be plenty of interest in him. I do see Kadri getting traded at some point. Maybe I'm off on that one, but it feels like it makes sense. I feel like he's been linked with Montreal, and I feel like that's also a really good fit for the Canadians and Kadri. His contract, will make it a little bit more complicated because he's got 4 years left on it, a $7 million cap hit. And even with this rising salary cap, that's still a pretty good chunk of change to fit in on the books. But I'm sure he'd have plenty of interest if the Flames do decide to trade him. It sounds like as of now, they don't want to trade him, but we'll see what that looks like maybe in a month or two, especially if the Flames keep heading in this direction. And then, yeah, Blake Coleman's a little bit surprising. I think it was Pierre LeBrun who said on Insider Trading earlier this week that the Flames are not looking to trade him, but plenty of teams are just calling because they're interested in that type of player, and can't blame them. And Blake Coleman's the type of player that seems like NHL GMs would love to have for a playoff run. I think if Calgary gets the right offer for him, it'd be kind of hard to move, not to move him. So that's another name to keep an eye on for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he's a valuable guy, as you know, from Tampa Bay with his what he did there with the Cups, and very young when he was with the Devils. But yeah, they might look at him as well. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where these guys go, if any of them get traded. I think Anderson's probably the most likely because he's been rumored way back into the offseason. Kadri's been kind of quashed maybe a little bit by their owner saying that he doesn't want them to trade him. I don't know how much say he has that in it, but yeah, we'll see how that all plays out with the Flames, especially if they keep losing and around the trade deadline, they're still way down there that they have no chance at playoffs. They'll probably be selling off anyone they can. I mean, maybe not guys with term. I mean, Kadri has some term left on his contract, which I think that's probably, and Coleman as well. So, I mean, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. St. Louis Blues, Brayden Schenn, their captain, which, I mean, is very interesting to trade your captain after they just named him a couple seasons ago. But he has been in the rumors. Do you see him getting dealt?
Yeah, it feels like at some point he's going to get traded. He was in the rumor mill around the trade deadline last year. And if I remember right, the Devils and the Maple Leafs were also teams that were interested in him. I think was it today on 32 Thoughts? I think Elliot Friedman said that if the Maple Leafs had gotten Luke Schenn at last year's trade deadline, that Brayden Schenn may have approved the trade to Toronto. So that was pretty interesting to hear. I think his no trade clause also shifted from a full no trade clause to a 16-team trade list over the summer. So it'll be a little bit easier to trade him this season if that's something Doug Armstrong wants to do. I don't really think Schenn is the player that he used to be. You can definitely see signs of decline in his game, and he's still got $6.5 million cap hit for the next season and a half. So it'd be interesting to see. But I also think NHL GMs probably value the type of player that Schenn is, one for the intangibles, the leadership, but they also probably still see him as someone who could be a viable third-line center on the right fit. I think he's playing a little bit too high up the lineup in St. Louis right now. He's their second-line center because they traded Zach Bolduc, and that hasn't really worked out for the Blues so far. But I do think he's going to get traded at some point. If the Blues continue their slide, I think they're off to a worse start than expected. I don't really think anyone thought they would be this bad to start the season, and I don't think they're as bad as their record might indicate too. So if they turn it around, maybe Doug Armstrong will change his mind on that. But Doug Armstrong is also certainly not someone who's afraid to shake things up with a bold move. I think another name that I didn't include on the list too is Justin Falk. Kind of came up in the Brayden Schenn rumors as well too. So those are two guys maybe that they look to move. But to me, those are more cap clearing moves, and you're just trying to get younger and shed some salary cap space to get a little younger down the road, which I think the Blues could benefit from. So we'll see what happens there. But I do think Schenn's probably going to get traded at some point.
For sure. I think around the trade deadline, that's something that could be definitely a guy that a lot of teams would really want. I mean, last season, that's why he was around in the trade rumors as well. So very good addition. Just like when they traded Ryan O'Reilly, it's the same type of deal. That type of player will really help a playoff team for sure. All right. Well, you finished the article with mentioning a few other names that may or may not be traded because the Eastern Conference is such an amalgamation of the last place team is actually not that far away from being in the playoff picture. The point spread is actually not that crazy. So who else do you see that once the separation starts, and inevitably it will, with these teams?
Yes, I mean, I look at Buffalo. Buffalo is the one team right now who seems to be kind of slipping out of the picture. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with them. We all know Alex Tuck will be a free agent next summer. He's one of the last few good remaining free agents for the 2026 class after all these top players signed extensions in the last month or so. So if they can't agree to a contract extension with him, will they make him available and try to trade him and maximize value for him? I think I didn't include him in the article, but I saw stuff about Tage Thompson. I don't really think that makes too much sense for Buffalo, so I wouldn't expect him to make it to the trade market. But teams like the Philadelphia Flyers, the Pittsburgh Penguins, who are not expected to be particularly good, the same with the Boston Bruins and the New York Islanders. If these teams start fading off, they have some valuable pieces that could be trade fodder around the deadline. I mean, Brian Rust and Rickard Rakell were in the trade rumor mill all summer, and nothing ever happened. And then the Penguins, right now, I think they're currently in a playoff spot. If they fade out, I'm sure Kyle Dubas will change his course of action, and he'll probably look to move either one or both of Rust and Rakell, and maybe even Erik Karlsson hits the rumor mill as well. The Islanders, I don't think the Islanders are going to stay in it, but the Metropolitan Division is just kind of outside the Devils and the Hurricanes right now. It's completely up for grabs.
Yeah.
If they fade out of the picture, Anders Lee, he's a pending free agent, I believe, and as is John Gabriel Pajot. Those would be two guys that would be quite valuable in the trade market, especially Pajot, considering teams are looking for center depth. And then we'll see what happens with the Bruins. They got hot and won, 7 games in a row or something like that. I'm not sold on them being a playoff team, and I think teams that are behind them, like the Lightning and the Panthers, will eventually catch up to them and push them out of the playoff race. If so, they might have a couple of pieces, namely Pavel Zacha. His name has been in the rumor mill since I feel like the summer. If they fade out of playoff contention, I could see them trading Zacha as well. But there's a lot to play out in the Eastern Conference. I think the Sabres are really the only team who are trending in the wrong direction right now. But all these teams have to play each other at some point, and eventually they'll even things out. And I think as we get closer to even maybe Christmas, we could get a better idea of what if the trade market will look like, because the Eastern Conference should be a little bit more settled in.
Yeah, it's still very early, but it is really a logjam in the East. The West, there's a few teams that are starting to kind of be at the bottom there, but we'll have to revisit this as the season goes on and close to the trade deadline, where all this plays. But thanks, Alex, for coming on and discussing the article you just put out there. Make sure checking that article out. Of course, David Kampf is no longer part of that trade thing, but there's a lot of relevant stuff still in there. So take a look at that. Everything else at hockeywriters.com. We got great articles throughout all the 32 teams. And of course, our Substack newsletters and every other video we have on the YouTube channel. But until our next video, we will see you next time.